What is up, guys? Due to some, I don't know, unfortunate series of events and bad decision making, you have landed here with me on episode 34 of Thompsin and Other Disappointments. This is free to listen to on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify, and with a cheeky advanced listen coming soon to Patreon subscribers. It's you'll still get to listen to it on YouTube and iTunes and everything, but there'll just be like a first listen for Patreon supporters, if you like. So you'll still be able to absorb mine and my guests' political and dystopian musings and non-versation thereafter. But I want to sort of try to give something to the people that are supporting me and this podcast, because I want it to continue growing and for it to be able to attract the guests that you guys want to listen to. So that's that. This episode today is an edition of Fuck This Week, which I said before, I really wanted to call it Motherfuck This Week. I feel like that really conveys my dismay and my just you know, when you pinch the top of your nose, you know, and squint your eyes in disbelief at the cretiny that you see before you in broad society. That I feel like motherfuck this week. I really feel like that encapsulates that feeling better than fuck this week. But you know what, fuck this week works too. So you know, it fits in the artwork better, and it's more likely to be commissioned by people if it apparently motherfuck is more offensive. So let's just go with fuck this week. So this is like these fuck this week. Wow, I've said that a lot now. These editions, these episodes are where I run through some of the stories that have resonated with me, and I try to make sense of the senseless. That's the basic concept of it. Just running through a couple of stories and you know, bouncing ideas off you guys, and as I say, you know, trying to understand it, trying to make sense of the fucking madness that gets reported in the news every fucking day. Every day I think that we can't scrape the barrel anymore. We can't get any lower, and then something comes along to just like excavate and just plow into the through the basement. Archaeologists surrounding the area like, yeah, no, this is pretty low now, mate. Pretty terrible. So anyway, let's get into it. Let's start the shit. We are off like a prom dress. So the first news story that resonated with me this week, you know, and it's continuing to dominate the papers, is Afghanistan. You know, the withdrawal, the return of soldiers, the last flights out of Afghanistan. Really shocking footage, and you know, just in the last 24 or 48 hours, we've seen reports coming out of the Taliban effectively celebrating freedom, which is a weird paradoxical concept, isn't it? Because you think Taliban, you don't think freedom. You think these are guys who oppress. These are guys who want to remove democracy, remove people's right to vote for their future and for the standards that they want to implement or continue to have within their society. They want to take all of that away, and I don't know what the situation is with like women and children's education and the burqa and all of that shit yet, but I don't imagine it's going to be conducive with the phrase freedom. But anyway, be that as it may, they've celebrated the freedom of Afghanistan from what they see as sort of Western tyranny. It's a really like weird, through the looking glass interpretation of the situation in Afghanistan. So there's footage of them celebrating that and mocking. I just saw this morning that they're holding a sort of mock funeral for the West and for NATO. Like, you know, that those guys are finished. That you know, it's all dead, and you know, here's a funeral, and we're going to talk about some of the good times that we had, but now they've got, you know, like that sort of vibe. And here's the weird thing, right? Is it seems really distasteful to me now to listen to that shit. Like, you know, these are Western forces who went in there, we think, with admirable aims and goals. You know, you'd like to think that the reason that we went in there was to take the Taliban out and to stop Afghanistan from being this sort of haven, this training ground for terror groups. That's the narrative that we're spun. And so for us to be sort of effectively ejected from there, and then for them to hold this mock funeral, like mocking the death of the Western influence there seems distasteful, right? But here's the weird thing. I cast my mind back to when I was about 28, and we had this friend. I better not use his real name, so I'll call him Wilfred. His name was Wilfred. And Wilfred used to hang out with us religiously every weekend, and we would all take drugs, and we would all go out clubbing, and we hung out, and we talked, and we laughed, and we drank, and danced, and we saw a lot of Wilfred. And then Wilfred got a girlfriend, and it all stopped. And this guy who we'd grown close to, who we'd grown to sort of love and enjoyed spending time with, just vanished off the face of the earth. And I started, to my shame, I started posting things on Facebook saying, like, you know, we had some really good times with Wilfred. He was a very loved guy, and we're going to miss him a lot. And in these times of challenge, it's important to remember the good times and share some stories about the times that Wilfred. Anyway, so like, people were like reading these statuses going like, what the fuck? Wilfred's dead? Is he dead? I'm like, no, he's just, we never see him anymore. He's just like cut us all off. He got a girlfriend, and now we never see it. So, you know, we're just going to hold a little memorial service where we can remember him and remember, you know, it seemed really funny to me at that time. And now I'm, you know, 40 years old, and I look at this sort of shit, Taliban mock funerals. I'm like, actually, that feels really distasteful. And yet, when I think back to the Wilfred stuff, it still makes me laugh. Even that, like, I don't know what that says about me, about my psychology. That distasteful stuff makes me laugh when it's me that gets the laugh out of it. I don't know. Let me know if you think that was funny, because if it really is, if they're both equally distasteful, then maybe I should make some apologies or something. Anyway, so the flights were coming back in to the UK and to America and to other countries with the last of the British soldiers. And there was a predictable front pages, you know, pictures of soldiers cramped in like sardines, flying back home, praising them as heroes, and right, here's the fucked up thing, right? I live in what was until very recently and still is quite a sort of army town. The forces dominate the town in which I live. And I was driving through it on the morning that all of the soldiers were due to fly back in. I don't know if they were, you know, flying back in this area. Wouldn't be too far from here anyway. I was driving through and I was like, you know, a lot of this town is a shithole. You know, like a lot. Like, imagine flying back from Afghanistan into this town, and this is what you see. You know, like I'm driving through at like 6:30 a.m. or something, and you know, there's just bins out, and the rubbish is like overflow from the bins, and it's just shit everywhere, and you know, people hanging around outside their houses just staring into nothingness, just like smoking and emotionless. You know, like those like kind of people that look like they've seen too much, people that like haggard by life, like, and then there's bins and there's haggard people, like, and it's just a bit of a shit old town, you know. And I just think, like, everyone knows that morale is important for soldiers. Like, why would you make this place your like army town? Why would you train these guys and tell them, yeah, it's really important that you keep your morale up, and by the way, this is what you're fighting for. This kind, like, would you fight for your country if my town was like your reference point for this kind? Oh fuck, this place is glorious, I better fight for here. Yeah. Like, probably not. I don't know. Like, would I fight for my town in which I live if I take a drive through or a walk through and all I see is like, I mean, it's not as bad as some places I lived. I lived in Tooting and I saw a fully grown woman take a shit in a road in the middle of day. She just pulled her pants down and took a shit. And I remember thinking, I've never seen that before. And I've never seen it in this place that I live now. You'll notice I'm not giving away my town name, but that's because I never know if there's any weirdos listening. John left of the countryside told me that he basically gets stalked by like weird right-wingers and like doxers and shit. So I don't want to, you know, give away too much on these things. So far, touch wood, I've been quite lucky. You know, I mean, if I carry on criticizing my own town for long enough, I don't know, you know, maybe one of these weirdos will track me down and then take a shit in the street in front of. Oh yeah, you think you're above it, do you? You think you're above taking a shit in the street? Well, I got something for you. Try and even the score or something. I don't know. Would I fight for this town if this was my reference point for my country and I trained in this town and our high street and our bins everywhere and fucking, you know, junkies sitting in shop door, like, yeah, this is a country to be proud of, Aid, you know? Go over there and fight for the honor of this place with that overdosing heroin addict over there. It's worth fighting for. No. Can I have a flight back, please? No. The other topic that came out this week, it wasn't really a news story. It came off the back of a conversation that I had with Supertansky and Davy Moo. And if you don't follow either of those, I don't know why you would not be by this point. Supertansky is big on Twitter and TikTok, and Davy Moo is getting big on both of those platforms. They both share a lot of sort of left-leaning, progressive bits and bobs on both of them, and often quite funny. And we were having a chat on WhatsApp about dick pics, right? Now, dick pics, I was about to say it's quite a contentious subject, but it's not really. Whenever the subject of dick pics gets raised in conversation, there is always a natural reaction to it, which is that's fucking gross, and people should not send dick pics. Now, you might be thinking from the tone that I'm talking about this shit that I'm about to come out and defend them, like I think I should have the right to send people unsolicited dick pics. I'm not. That's not the angle that I'm coming from here. It was really like I suppose it sort of opened my eyes, right? This conversation about dick pics, because so basically somebody got a dick pic unsolicited. And there was some confusion around it, around, do I now have the right to send that dick pic elsewhere and mock it and take the piss out of it? And the argument was, like within the WhatsApp conversation, was I should have the right to do that because I didn't ask for the photo. So if you don't want your photo of your penis going around the internet or whatever, maybe don't send it to people unsolicited, right? And I sort of volunteered the information that I used to know a guy who I was pretty good mates with, who did send dick pics to people, and sometimes they were unsolicited. And then we sort of, in this WhatsApp conversation, we got into quite a lengthy exchange about it, where I was sort of saying, you know, I don't think it was anything more malicious than mischief. And this was, you know, what, 15 years ago that he was doing this. In fact, no, it must have been maybe 10. It was like whenever camera phones first came out, right? I can't remember when that was. The old flip phones used to do cameras, right? So maybe it was 15 years ago. And to my mind, it was never anything more than mischief. And he was quite open about it. He would just be like, "Hi, I sent a picture of my dick to so and so." And then if it ever came up in conversation, it would be like a laugh, like around a pub table thing. It would be like, you know, then the girl would say like, "Yeah, well, why don't you stop sending me pictures of your dick then?" And then everyone would laugh and he'd be like, well, all right then. You know, like, and I know that in today's political context and the context of misogyny and feminism and stuff, that sounds bad. I get that. And I imagine, you know, I don't spend so much time with him these days, but I imagine he's grown as a person, and I can't imagine that he would still be sending dick pics out at age 40, right? But it's still I really think it kind of shook people in the conversation in the wrong way. It was like, you know, I don't know your friend and I can't speak for him, but that to me would be ringing alarm bells. There was that kind of vibe to it, and I get that, I understand that, but then there was this sort of this feeling of, you know, if a man sends an unsolicited picture of his genitals to a woman, that suggests that he wants to control her or that suggests that he's getting off on how uncomfortable it would make her feel. And that is something to look out for. And it's an interesting thing, because like obviously me as a guy, I've never received a picture of a penis, so I don't know what that feels like. And also, I'm like, being a man, I'm unlikely or less likely to feel physically threatened at the prospect of a penis landing in my, like, I don't have that life experience behind me where I know how it feels to have somebody bigger than me sexually interested in me, and I'm not interested in them. That is a really important thing. It's like when men say like, "Oh well, I'd be flattered if a woman told me that she thought I had a big dick." Like, I'd be flattered if she said that I looked really, really hot in my blah blah blah. But if you reverse the situations around, like if it's if a man tells a woman, "Oh, you look fucking you look scalding hot in that," she might feel like, oh no, he sees me as a sort of, this is icky and I don't want to offend him, and what if I turn him down and he gets all toxic about it? Like there's a totally different dynamic to it that I accept, and I never am going to fully understand. But having said that, I also don't think that the intent there is to make the woman feel controlled or to make the woman feel uncomfortable. I think it is, to my mind, to my straight white male brain, it is just mischief. It's just him trying to be a bit cheeky. Now, I've never sent dick pics. It's not something that interests me. I don't think it's going to progress my case in making women more interested in me or aroused or anything. It's just not a method or a medium that I would choose to explore if I was interested in a woman. But I don't think that it's malicious or toxic. I don't think it's coming from a toxic place. But it was such an interesting conversation, because then I talked about it with my girlfriend, and we sort of, we really pulled apart this idea that, if you send a picture of your penis unsolicited to a woman, even if the intent is not there to make her feel uncomfortable or threatened, which I think a lot of people think that every guy that sends a dick pic is like, oh, he's a fucking rapist predator. I don't think that at all. I think actually what it is kind of, I don't want to say dumb men, because it's like, they're not dumb. Maybe they lack some layer of emotional intelligence and they don't appreciate the difference in dynamics with men and women. And what I mean is, if a woman sends a man a picture of herself naked or with her top off, that is an arousing visual sexual thing. If a woman sends me a picture of her boobs, I'm gonna go, cool. I'll say, actually, I'm in a long-term relationship and I've got 2 kids, so I think you meant to send that to someone else. Probably not. That, that's what I would do. But a woman sending a picture of her boobs to a man is an arousing sexual visual thing. A man sending a picture of his penis to a woman is just not the same. It doesn't generate the same reaction with most women. I'm sure there are women out there who, when they get a dick pic, they're like, oh, fucking hell, love me a bit of that pork truncheon. Some real dirtbags out there, I'm sure. But and maybe, if you're with your husband or your boyfriend or whatever, and he sends you a picture of his dick, maybe that is arousing to you because you know him and it's not unsolicited, right? But the raw nuts and bolts of sending a picture unsolicited of your private parts is not the same of like a woman doing it to a man versus a man doing it to a woman. And I think the men who do send a picture of their dick to women, whether unsolicited or not, I just don't think they really understand that shift in dynamic. It's sort of akin to the difference in strippers, right? Like if a man is going to get married and his mates get him a stripper, the stripper comes in, takes off her clothes, and it's actually quite, like most of the men in there are looking at her boobs and her bum and going like, oh, fucking hell, she's well hot. Oh, look at her. Fuck. Like, and then the man sort of like, sits down on the chair and she ties him up or, does whatever it is that she does. But it is there's a sexual visual thing to it where men will happily go into like fucking the honeypot in Maidenhead or Stringfellows or whatever, and they will pay 50 or 100 quid to sit in a booth and just stare at, like, with a straight face. It is, it's a serious, I just want to see her boot. It's a serious thing. Women get a stripper in before they get married, and it's a laugh. It's like, the stripper comes in, and then, the mother-in-law and the sisters are all oh my God, I can see his bum. It's a silly thing. It's a bit of a piss take. And I'm sure sometimes it is a sexual thing to some women out there. But for the most part, I think male strippers with groups of women, I think it's kind of seen as a bit of a silly thing. I think if you wanted to, I don't know, like the equivalent of a man sending a woman a dick pic and being like, check out my dick, isn't this a turn on? Like that is the equivalent of a woman sending me a pic of her payslip. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure I could word that a bit more articulately, a bit more eloquent, but it's kind of the same thing. If you're a man and you send a picture of your penis to a woman and go, yeah, naked pics are hot, so here's a picture of my dick, and she just sort of like looks at it like, well, great. I mean, I'm not really into like pictures of your dick. Like, I'd rather have a conversation. I'd rather we go out for the night, and then, yeah, I'm up for some fun, but I don't need a picture of your penis. It's, it doesn't really. That is the same as a woman sending me a picture of her high payslip showing how much money she's earned. Or like, check out my massive house. I'd be like, great. I mean, it's not really, doesn't really do much for me. I'm sure that sounds a bit gender stereotypy, but do you get my point? It's like, on the base level, sending a picture of your penis doesn't work, but I don't think it's necessarily always this malicious thing. It's a bit like, this is going to sound a bit contentious, but it's a bit like when people say rape isn't even about sex, it's about control. That's a big thing that they wheel out. It's not even about sex, it's about control. It's about a man's control over a woman. And I don't know if that's true. Like, I mean, like, I've never raped anyone. I don't know any rapists, but, in as crass way as possible, and I understand this is probably quite offensive to water it down like this, but I'd like to control my finances. But I don't send, lewd pictures of my penis and shit to NatWest. I honestly think that for the most part, it comes from a sort of warped understanding of what sex is and could be and what relationships are. And so, but this narrative of sort of control, and it gets wheeled out with dick pics and shit as well. It's like, well, your friend sent a picture of his penis unsolicited to a woman, and he wanted to make her feel controlled. He wanted to make her feel like, even though she's uncomfortable, I'm still going to send you this picture of my penis because I can still do it. I don't think that's the case. I think actually my girlfriend put it better than I could when she said it's more likely on the balance of probabilities that it is some sort of desperate, quite lonely man who's trying to leapfrog the whole getting to know you period. He's trying to leapfrog the whole, like, in jokes and building up a relationship with somebody and get straight to the sexual bit because he thinks that sending a picture of his penis is going to elicit like the sexual side of this relationship, and she'll be like, oh, nice cock, here's a picture of my tit. Like it's quite desperate, it's quite base level and rushed. And anyway, that's how she sort of saw it, and I was like, yeah, I could see that. So yeah, I don't know, look, I don't want to labor it too much, but I don't know if I agree that it's this malicious thing. The thing I would concede on, though, is that in the current day and age, and remember, when my friend did this, it was not the current day and age, it was 15 years ago, right? But in the current political context and the context of feminism and misogyny and, the week by week news stories that we see, I would say that even if your intent is purely, well, innocent, even if your intent is as innocent as possible in that scenario, like you did want to just, maybe she sent the wrong signals, like when, or you picked up on the wrong signals when you were out, and you thought it was going to be okay, so you sent a picture of a dick, but you thought it would like get you to second base or third base or something along those lines. Even if your intent is reasonably honourable, and reasonably is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, I think in the current day and age, you have to factor in the wider context that it's not really acceptable, and it's not up to you to decide if this is appropriate or not. You just have to understand that women do feel threatened by that sort of thing. They can feel controlled, I guess, and it's not, don't fucking take the chance. Like, at least send a question first. Say, would you like to see a picture of my penis? That's the bare minimum entry level. Wow, this all got really, it's got very, very deep, very troubling and problematic, probably. I don't know. Let's move on to the next topic, which is, a lot of people talk about what is the greatest problem that we face at the moment. Some people say it would be the climate emergency. Some people say it is Brexit. Other people say it's political tribalism, which I think is, all of these things are fine, for imminent threats that we face and problems that need to be solved. I think that the problem that actually encapsulates all of them, that engulfs all of them, is short-termism. And it's politically agnostic. It affects everyone. I see it in like examples in the left and the right, and people who are not even connected to politics. You see it across the board in all of society. Is this sort of short-termist, immediate gratification approach to everything, and not even gratification, just immediate lazy fixes to problems. And I rant a lot on TikTok and Twitter about various problems, but most of them can be encapsulated again, like into short-termism. If we somehow changed the dial a bit, if we moved the needle a bit in terms of how we look at problems and the ripple effects that the solutions create, we would be in such a better place in the next like 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. But the problem that we have is that, and we will talk about sort of politically speaking, because that's something that we can all relate to. But the problem is that we operate in this country and in Western liberal democracies in 5-year cycles, say. So there's a sort of panic with political parties to achieve what they need to achieve in the first 2 years, and then in the remaining 2 years to start gearing up the goodies for people for elections, so that then when you get to the end of the cycle, people will remember you, that you're the party that brought in X, Y, and Z, right? So in its more cynical models, you'll see this with the Tory party, and I'm sure Labour have done this also. But like with the Tory party example, it would be like they'll cut 20,000 police officers, and then in the year of the election, they'll announce that they're hiring 5,000 more police officers or something. So they're still down net 15,000. They've still made the savings, but in the election year, they get to say, we are commissioning this, blah, 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 blah. So 5-year cycles of trying to achieve what you want to do and then gearing up for an election again. That's just one example, right? The other examples are Brexit. So we've voted to leave the EU. That like a political earthquake like that should have been managed in a careful, considered, consultative way between mature, like grown-ups in Britain and grown-ups in the EU, sitting around a table, and over the space of 10 years, maybe then like attempt to unpick and extricate our relationship, which has been built up over decades, and try to leave in a careful way that doesn't disrupt either side's economy too badly, right? That's how that should have worked. But because of this short-termist, this urgent, immediate need to fix solutions, even if the fix is terrible, what we got was a Conservative Party who were obsessed with getting Brexit done, and tabloids and newspapers obsessed with getting Brexit done. And so the output of that is that it's rushed, it's hurried, just so they can say, yeah, we got Brexit done, we've left, aren't we great? Because they only have 5 years to do these things. And so the short-termist, the payback, I guess, or the kickback for behaving in that way politically is that you then have to deal with all of the fallout. Like, now we're talking about food shortages, we've got blood test shortages, we've had an EU driver shortage, EU hospitality worker shortage. That's just the shit I'm reading off the top of my head. Like the fishing industry, the car industry, all of these, like Northern Ireland, like all of these ripple effects, these outputs of Brexit being hurried and rushed in a way that is short-termist, just so that you can say, yeah, we got it done. Yeah, but did you get it done, or did you just create 20 more problems? Oh, no, the important thing is that we got it done. Anyway, back on to the next election. You know, it's like, it's so narrow-minded and short-termist. It's like a toddler sort of climbing up a wobbly pile of books to get to the sweetie jar. So then you get the sweetie, but now you're stuck on a wobbly pile of books, and then it falls down and you break your leg or something. You know, it's like you just, all you were focused on was getting to this one tiny thing. Like, you didn't give any consideration to the implications of what would happen when you actually got there. And it's that kind of mentality. And I'm not just talking about Brexit. I'm talking about, Afghanistan, right? So we're talking about 20 years that we were over there. Now, that seems like a long time. But if you're talking about building states, changing the culture of a whole country to bring them up into 21st century Western culture, and create institutions and get people familiar with and embracing universities and capitalism, 20 years is not that long. And so to pull out after 20 years and just go, well, yeah, I mean, we did it as good as we can, that is a short-termist mentality. To change a nation's culture, and a nation that is made up of so many different sort of tribes and cultures and disciplines and leanings, such as Afghanistan's, is, I mean, the little that I know about Afghanistan, I would have thought that would be like a 50-year project. So to pull out after 20 years is short-termist as fuck. If you look at places like China and Russia, now they are dictatorships, right? They might say that they're not, but they are. They don't have to worry about short-termism and gratification and pressure from the tabloids to get shit done tomorrow to sell papers. It's just one party forever, right? Now, that sounds bad, and it is bad because it's, and it's not democratic. But the benefit that they have of that is that they don't work in 5-year cycles. China are able to look at the planet and go, right, where do we need to be in 40 years' time? Okay, cool. Well, let's start laying the seeds now for that, and that. And then that could help us with our 20-year plan, which will help us with our 10-year plan. They work it back strategically. Like places like China, what they've done is they've gone in with like a soft power approach. What they've done is they've invested in London property, and they've bought up American debt. And they've stayed the fuck out of Middle Eastern. They haven't spaffed all their money in Middle Eastern conflicts. So the output of that over their 20-year plan, like going back, is that now they have huge influence in America, and they have huge influence in the UK, and they don't have a bloody nose having fucked around in the Middle East. So China actually look pretty competent and robust, whereas we look like we've spaffed a load of money on something and then run away from it, upended an entire country. We look ridiculous on the world stage. Nobody's going to trust us with any sort of military solutions in the near future. It may take decades to repair the damage inflicted on our reputation on the global stage. And China, I'm no massive fan of fucking dictatorships by a long shot. But if you were some weird and wonderful country out there and you needed the help, militarily speaking or politically speaking, from either the US or China, which one would you go for? I think you go with China. And kind of the same with Russia, right? When you ask yourself who benefits from Afghanistan, the implication or the temptation is to go for Putin because he fits the profile so good of like a Bond villain, a geopolitical Bond villain sat there behind a desk in a dark room with a cat in his lap, like the West is falling, like that sort of. Like the temptation is to assume that this is all working. Oh, I bet Putin's rubbing his hands together with glee at this. But, China will benefit more out of this, but to a lesser extent, Russia also. Because if you were this weird and wonderful country, you might go to Russia or you might go to China now. Because I think if I was the president of fucking, I don't know, the Congo or Brazil or, if I wanted help from a stable, robust, not ridiculous looking nation on the world stage, I could look at China and say they've got a 10-year plan, 20-year plan, they've strategically invested, they've got influence on the world stage. I could look at Russia and say sort of similar things, although they have a lot of sanctions wrapped around them. And then I could look at the US and I could say, well, the US have chaotically withdrawn. They've made a fool of themselves with Afghanistan. They've just had Trump. Now they've got Biden. Equally, if I look at the UK, similar problems, similar Western liberal democracies that have flushed their credibility down the toilet. And now I'd be in a position, if I was president of Brazil or wherever, I might look at the US and the UK as too fractious. I might look at it like these guys break international law, plus they change leaders every 5 years. So, like, what's to say that if I do a deal with the US now, what happens in 4 years' time or 3 years' time when it changes governments and then they suddenly go, yeah, I know, but that was the last guy. We don't want anything to do with you. Like that is instability. That is not robust. That's not reliable. And I think against the backdrop of shit like Afghanistan, we're now in a position where other countries might not want to do business with the UK or the US because we're so tribal, because we're so volatile. And that is the real sad legacy of shit like Afghanistan, and indeed of short-termism, to bring it back to the original point. And we see it like so on a geopolitical landscape, we see it there, but we also see it in the individuals at the top of the political tree in the UK. So Boris Johnson, I mean, take your pick. Any one of his sort of scandals are fueled by this raw psychological id that needs instant animal-like gratification. He'll fuck this woman over here because that's just what he wants to do right now. He'll say yes to this guy over here because he just needs to be liked by that guy right in this minute, in this room right now, and then fuck the consequences. Michael Gove this week also showed the attribute of being a short-termist motherfucker, because he had the choice to behave like a grown-up and take his divorce on the chin and conduct himself in a way that was fitting for a cabinet minister, and he decided, no, I'm going to go out clubbing until 3 a.m. in a fucking techno club. Like, I mean, you can't get more short-termist than that, than having a cabinet minister think to himself, yeah, well, this is what I want to do right now. This is, I know that I've probably got some shit in my brief I should be working on. I know it's more important now, more than ever, for cabinet ministers to look like they are doing their work rather than sunning themselves on a beach or fucking off to the West Country for an unofficial holiday. Or where did they go? Boris and Carrie went to Portugal on the slide, didn't they? I think earlier in the year. Or there's this whole sort of feeling that the cabinet ministers are just fucking off. Like, they can't even be asked anymore. They're just, yeah, I'll just go and sit on the beach. Or, no, I won't answer that phone call. Oh, yeah. And Gove is like, had the temerity in amongst all of that to just go, yeah, I might just, fuck it, I'll just go out clubbing, that's what I'll do. And like, against the backdrop of his divorce and shit, like, you could imagine him, like, here's what I like to think. I like to think that he had a really bad meeting with his solicitor and his wife's solicitor and his wife, and the discussions of a settlement, or like custody battling stuff, or, you know, the value of the house and it being divided by two, whatever it was, that divorce conversation with the solicitors did not go well for Michael. And then I like to imagine that he walked outside of the solicitors in his suit and he just went, well, time to get fucked, I guess. And then that was it. He just went out on a bender. Like, apparently he was drinking alone in a pub for hours beforehand. And then a few of the locals just went, you should come to this nightclub with us. We're going to go to a nightclub. He was like, yep, all right. See what I mean? Like, short-termist as fuck. Like, the long-term approach to that situation would be, I know that meeting didn't go well, but I need to think about how this will look and what this might do to my career, if it will make me look like a competent minister or an unstable one that's handling his divorce incredibly badly. How is that going to affect my career? How will people take me seriously if they see me dancing in a club at 3 a.m.? Short-termist as fuck. It's just like, yep, I fancy doing that. Let's go. I will now dance. Camera phones? I don't give a shit. Yep, film me. Who cares? And it's not even in government. I mean, I know I said we were going to tap into the politics side of it, but you see it across society. Like I after I got my first jab, I needed a haircut. I went to this hairdresser's around the corner, and she was cutting my hair and making conversation. And obviously the subject of the pandemic came up because she'd only recently reopened. And so we talked about the vaccine, and I said, oh, you know, I've just had my jab. And I said, oh, have you had yours yet? And she said, no, I'm not getting one. And I said, right, oh, okay. And I couldn't help but notice that this woman was 300 pounds. She was fucking massive. I don't want to sound misogynistic or like fat phobic or whatever the word is, but she was a fat bitch. She really was. I mean, her nearest and dearest will call her a fat bitch. I am positive of that. That is just her. You know, you can't be 300 pounds and a bit miserable and not be called a fat bitch. It's like you are deliberately jumping into the box ticking. Like, you know, do you know what? I'm going to be horrendously overweight and be pretty much miserable all the time. But it's not fair to call me a fat bitch. That's false advertising. Oh, I don't know. That's pretty much what you're offering. Anyway, I was in this hairdresser's, and she was cutting my hair, and so we were talking about the jab. She goes, she said she's not having the jab because she wasn't sure what it would do to her, and she just didn't feel safe about getting it. And she was 300 pounds big, and she cited, here's the kicker, she cited the news reports of the blood clots. The fucking blood. This 300-pound woman is worried about getting a jab in case it gives her blood clots in the brief 5-minute window that she's given herself to cut my hair and not shovel fucking cheeseburgers in her face. You know what I mean? Like, it's the short-termist thinking behind this on a societal level, where your hairdresser can say, I don't want to get the jab, which has been proven by scientists much smarter than you, me, or this fucking hairdresser, to be, by a colossal extent, safer for you than getting COVID, and will reduce your symptoms, decrease dramatically the likelihood that you'll need to be hospitalized or go on a ventilator. And yet this woman who has a cholesterol fucking high as a kite is like, oh, it might give me blood clot. Like, oh my God, motherfucker, can you just get your head out of talk radio for a second, put down the Daily Express, and just listen to yourself? Like, what if you get blood clots? Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, what if you get blood clots? Like, what? Here's a salad. Here's a fucking glass of water. Put down the Coca-Cola for a second. What if you get blood clots? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, today I get to feel like I'm not having the jab because I'm something of a contrarian, and I like to feel like I'm fighting against tyranny and oppression, so I'm not going to get the jab. So today I feel important and like some sort of freedom fighter. Right, okay. Well, that's your short-termist goal achieved, and you feel good about yourself. What about tomorrow? What about next week? What about 2 weeks from now, when the novelty of being this sort of tyranny-fighting oppression hound, when the novelty of that wears off and you get fucking COVID? and you end up in a hospital. Like, doesn't the long-term feeling of like embarrassment and shame ever fucking kick in with these people? You know, like, I've been posting these pictures of news stories on Instagram of people like her who say, I'm not getting the jab. I think the jab is bullshit. I think COVID's bullshit. I won't wear a mask. Or, you know the type, right? Commonly called COVIDiots. And there's a huge overlap with Brexiteers because they both see themselves as these sort of fighting against oppression, libertarian, like freedom fighters against tyranny. They don't want the state to overreach and jab in your arm, or, you know, all of that shit. And I've been posting news stories about these guys and the ones that then end up on a ventilator or end up dying, on the basis that I'm like, it's okay to have a bit of a giggle, because nobody's forcing these people to die in a really dumb way. You know, like, the information is out there. Scientists, as I say, smarter than you, me, this hairdresser, whoever else, have decided that these jabs are safe, or safe enough, or safer than getting COVID. And yet still, it's like, nah, not doing that. And I think they're just drunk on the ego of being the freedom fighter, of being like, no, well, everyone else was a fucking sheep and they all wear masks and they said, oh yeah, I'll gobble up your jabs, but I said no and I fought back. Like, they love being that person until they get COVID and they go into fucking hospital, and then suddenly they beg for the vaccine and release these videos and say, I just wish that I had got the jab when I could. It's like the short-termist mentality of these people, coupled with the ego, is such a dangerous preface to death and to their family mourning for them, that it's just so dark and depressing. Like, that's my biggest fear, is that I die in a stupid way. Like, I'm walking down the street and then just randomly somebody drops a piano out the window and it just, like, that's it, game over, splat. Or, you know, I forget to turn the blah 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 off, and then I turn the power and then the whole house blows up and I'm killed instantly, and then people are like, well, he was always a bit ditzy. You know, like, dying in a stupid way is my biggest fear. And if I do die in a stupid way, podcasts like this are going to get cut the fuck up and then posted next to the news story of how I fucking died stupidly. I understand that. I really do. I'm acutely aware of that. But that's why I don't understand why other people are not acutely aware of that. And when they go on these conservative radio shows, or they go on Facebook or wherever, and they peddle this nonsense about, like, no, the masks don't work, or, you know, the jabs are bullshit. And then they've seen hundreds, if not thousands of others by this point end up dying and looking fucking stupid and ending up on Reddit threads with people like me mocking it, going like, well, you know, he was a fucking idiot and he died of idiocy. Like, shouldn't the shame, like, pre-shame, shouldn't that kick in? Be like, oh, well, you know, I do like being a freedom fighter, but I really don't like dying and having everyone mock my death. Like, wouldn't you? Shouldn't that kick in? I feel like it should. I don't know, man. Anyway, listen, I've been rabbiting on now for almost an hour. So if you have made it to the end of this, please do give me a tweet, because I never know who the fuck is listening to this. So if you are listening, then please say hello, and I'll be back soon. There might be like a week's delay in the next episode or two, because I'm going to change laptops, and it takes me a while to configure these and to get it all set up again. So please bear with me. The other request I have is that if you have a friend who is interested in politics and or dystopia, and you think that they might enjoy a podcast where we sort of thrash out these topics, and we have a guest, and then there's Fuck This Week episodes. If you think this is the sort of thing that your friend might enjoy, please, please, please do refer it to them, because I'm really trying to grow the thing. It is just me producing it. It's 100% independent, and I'm trying to grow it purely through word of mouth. I don't really want to spend loads of money on PR and all that shit. So yeah, if you'd like to do that, that would be great. And in return, I will add you to the Patreon lists, where you'll get a little sneak preview of every episode before it's posted to everybody else. Once again, thanks a lot for listening. Do say hello on Twitter, and I'll catch up with you next time. Cheers, bye!